Okay, Eric, I see you want to talk a little bit about cluster communications networks. What can you tell us?
Sure. What I want to talk about specifically is the physical connectivity between cluster nodes in VCS. We get asked the question a lot is, what is the minimum number of required cluster interconnects in VCS? And the proper answer is 2 dedicated cluster interconnects. That term gets a little bit misleading, however, because sometimes you have configurations where you only have 1 spare network interface card as depicted by these little squares at the bottom of the drawings. So let's take, initially we'll take a just simple 2-node cluster with connectivity to a public network and then 1 spare network interface card in each server for cluster communications. This is not an ideal type of hardware configuration for cluster nodes, but it is supported. And here's how we do it. Let's take a very simple one where we've got crossover cables connecting the 2 servers together. The green line indicates our dedicated cluster heartbeat connection. The blue line is our public network interface. So in VCS communications, we support 2 different types of links. One is a regular dedicated link, and the other one is a low priority link, which uses a public network connection. Fully supported. Not ideal, but this is used in some configurations where it's absolutely required. Much better would be to have a second interface in each one of these servers for your private network links between the cluster nodes. And again, you could use simple Ethernet crossover cables. And I'm using Ethernet as an example here, by the way, but as of the 6.1 release, we do support InfiniBand for cluster interconnects. That's primarily used for flexible storage sharing, which would be a video topic for another day. So this would be a preferred configuration over the previous one in that I now have 2 dedicated redundant links for cluster communications, and I can still use this one as a 3rd link low pri. It's important to note that while we do require a minimum of 2 cluster interconnects, we support also a maximum number of 8. So combination of low priority links and dedicated links, total number of 8 would be supported. As I mentioned, this is less than ideal using crossover cables for the cluster interconnects, even though it is fully supported and will work just fine. The limitation you run into here is if you want to add a node to the cluster. If you want to do that, you can't do that with crossover cables. You're going to have to take the cluster down in order to implement the remaining links. So I'll take away my crossover cables here. I'm going to add a 3rd node with its 2 network interface connections and extend the public network out to it. And what I'll do is I'll add redundant network switches. Remember, in all HA designs, you don't want to have any single points of failure, so you want redundant network connections for everything. That includes redundant network switches not connected to the same power supplies. In this configuration, each cluster node will be connected to each one of the switches. In this way, each one of the servers has a separate network path into the switches, and we have our two redundant network connections for each one of the servers.
All right. So, Eric, what I see here is a pretty simple explanation of how how a customer should set up their cluster communications networks.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.